voice is really, really hoarse. I was talking to a good friend of mine for many, many years that left like 15 years ago or something. And actually, he's very much alive. So, anyway, my voice is really hoarse because I talked a lot. We had this great conversation today and two phone calls. And then, I worked yesterday and, greeting customers and all that. And I talk too much. My voice gets super hoarse. But anyway, I probably shouldn't be doing this vlog. But anyway, um, I've been wanting to do it for days. So I need to get this done so I can go do some other work that I've got today that I got to do. Um, so anyway, I did a vlog about how I worked at Thomas Number Five hamburger joint, where I used to, drop in like after school, or I was wandering around Venice Beach on the weekend or something, and the guy was real nice. It's probably the owner for all I know. And the guy was real nice, and he'd have me work, while he went to go do errands, whatever. He was probably the owner and going to do a bank deposit. I don't know. But anyway, and I got lots of great free food for me and my friends whenever I felt like it. But anyway, nice man. And I guess that's about the only time I ever worked a burger joint in my life. But anyway, so, I mentioned about how my dad caught me down at Venice Beach and, kind of repoed me from Venice Beach and was mad as hell. And I'm like, I'm not doing anything, I'm not doing anything wrong, and I mean, of course, I didn't want to ask him for money to go buy a burger after school because we had good food at the house. I mean, my dad used to get what he called bugs, lobster tails, from a fisherman for like 50 cents each when he'd do the Catalina trips and stuff. And he'd bring them home and throw them in the freezer. And hell, I remember throwing one in the microwave. You believe that? Throwing them, they shrink, And and it was like, oh, it ain't nothing. I go home and eat lobster in the microwave. I just, you know, wanted to buy a burger. If I had asked him for the money, he'd have been mad as hell, going, we have food at the house. So I just, let's do my own thing. But anyway, and after school, and so I guess he thought I was really bad news. He thought I was like down there doing drugs or hanging out with hoodlums or something, and I wasn't doing anything like that. And so, in most of our lives, we ran loose. We had nannies. I, I walked all over town since I was a little bitty kid. Um, and it's kind of like, you know, grown up, you know, and since I was like 7 or 8. And so anyway, back then things weren't that scary. Not like the world we have today, where you don't want to let your kids out of your eyesight, and it's the law now. You can't just let them run loose, under 15. So anyway, so I guess he thought I was really getting into bad things or something, and it wasn't. But I guess his solution was, oh, she wants to work. So anyway, I guess I was about 12 or 13, and my dad had finally graduated from the closet under the stairs to a very small, nice little office, and he had a lady working for him, an English lady, that was real sweet. That I don't know if he was dating her or what back then, but she had the goo-goo eyes for him, just like every other woman did. Both my parents were very good looking, and so anyway, her name was Margaret Chilton. She's probably not around anymore, but very nice lady and very, proper English lady and real sweet. And uh, my dad really trusted to her and everything. And, my dad had made a statement several years ago to me back in the early 2000s. He said, I had so much trouble asking for money that people owed me, because like he would charge classes and they could pay, some money in the next class or the next class or whatever, and the bills would build up. And he really needed the money to work on. And a lot of these people had huge money, so it was nothing to them. And they just kind of rather write a big check than write one every time they come up there, for a sailing lesson. So he said, so I always had trouble asking people for my money. That's why I hired someone to do that job, because they could do it so much better than I. Never forget those words. So anyway, Margaret was working for him and stuff. And, in the days that she didn't work, my dad would go in and try to run the office and then close the doors to go out and teach a class or go out and lecture at one of the local colleges because he worked for several of the colleges in California there, UCLA, SMC, PP, a bunch of them. I think Mount St. Mary's too or something, um, out by Playa del Rey, and he did that and plus owned his own sailing school. So anyway, by that time I think we had two or three instructors that he had hired on. And originally the way I understood it, he started the company after my parents split up and out of that little closet, and then he had Vince Puglisi as one of his first instructors or something, and then he had quite a few as time went on. So anyway, when he graduated into that office there and Margaret was the main secretary, he just really had trouble closing the doors and trying to teach sailing. And then people, wanted to pay a bill, whatever. He had another class scheduled right behind that, and da 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 da. And so next thing you know, he's like, "Oh, I need you to work the office." And in that particular office, before we got the bigger one, it was my idea. And he thought I'd lost my mind. I was just a kid. One of the days I was working up in that office, this guy starts walking into the office, and I'm thinking, oh, he's just going to go upstairs, and he looks like Lloyd Bridges. And I had seen all the old movies, submarine movies and all this stuff, and I just thought he was really cool. And he actually walks right into the door of the office, and I'm sitting there at the desk. And it was just a little small office with a desk, and a typewriter and a phone. And I mean, it was probably less than 10 by 10. I mean, just a little tiny place, but it was a nice little office, and overlooked the marina there. And so this guy walks in, he says hi, and he's asking for my dad. And then he said he had a class and he wanted to schedule a couple other classes, and then he wanted to pay his bill. And so I had to look up his bill, and everything was kind of handwritten back then. We didn't have computers for all that stuff. Everything was kind of hand done, hand posted, whatever. We even had a credit card slider machine, if you can believe that. I don't know if you know what that is, but that was where you laid the card down on this metal tray, and then you laid like a 4 copy receipt thing that was like 3 by 6 or 7, and you laid it on top of there, and you slid the rail thing over, and it would emboss into the paper with the carbon paper on all the different sheets of the actual physical card numbers coming up out of the card. And then they would sign for it. You'd fill it out, and then they would sign for it. Um, and then that's how you collected your credit card stuff. And back then, you had to pay a service fee, and I think it was like 1,000 a year to be able to run a credit card service. Otherwise, people wrote checks or paid cash, and we just kept it in the drawer there. And then at closing, my dad would pick all that stuff up, deposit in the bank, whatever. And so anyway, he did all his own books basically and all that. And later, Margaret was handling it all. And so I about passed out. This guy writes me a check for his debt. I'm like, and what is your name, sir? And he's like, Lloyd Bridges. And I was like, I about passed out. I'm trying to hold my breath. I'm just a kid, I was like 12 or 13. And I'm like, no, Lloyd Bridges is like right here. I wanted to pass out. Took his check, he said a few words. He was very, very nice. And then walked out. And I was like, wanted to fall on the floor. I'm like, oh my gosh. There were so many famous people that my dad has taught through the years, both my parents. People that circumnavigated around the world, single-handedly, and all kinds of interesting people, actors and actresses, and just all kinds of people. Buckminster Fuller to the Hefners to the Bridges, just all kinds of people, and even Batman. Um, but it's just typical. In California, you see them all the time. You see it, famous people all the time. And so anyway, it's like seeing fancy cars. You just see them all the time. So anyway, I worked with my dad, and I was kind of bummed because I'm like, well, I mean, how much are you paying me? and it was less than minimum wage. And I'm like, that's not even fair. It was like $1.60 an hour or something like that. And he's like, but I can do that. I'm like, that's not even legal. And he's like, no, I can do that because your family, it's a different wage. And it was like, what a ripoff. Well, at the same time, my dad decided a lot of people, had children. And I guess he came up with a great idea, or my baby sister came up with a great idea to teach the kids in our Sabbath, which is a small, like 8-footer boat. And, that way when people wanted to take classes, it was more of a thing where, they didn't have to hire babysitters or whatever to figure out what to do with the kids because they could schedule a class with my baby sister to teach them how to sail. So he made out like bacon on both ends. Although, years later, my baby sister was like, Daddy didn't pay me poop, like $2 or $5 less. Or some crazy number she said. I can't remember what it was she said, but it was like, no. Because, he would charge them by the hour for the kids' lessons, and then he would turn around and pay my baby sister. And so she was like, an instructor for the sailing school and all that, handling the children. So anyway, and then later he got into, leasing boats and stuff. If people completed so many classes and had so much experience, then they could lease a bigger boat, a bigger boat, a bigger boat, and all that kind of thing. And that was a really big deal. And he had a huge fleet of boats at one point. The insurance was horrendous though. And so people that would have boats that they hardly ever sail, these people buy sailboats or just about any boat. And they spend all that money, pay insurance, put it in the dock, and pay, dock rent. That's huge. And then they might take the boat out one time a year. And so it's sort of like an RV, same thing, different day. And so, people would go, hey, how about if I sell you my boat, or do you want to put it, in the fleet of the rentals? And he was like, yeah, sure. And so he kind of adopted boats and buying boats. And so it was a really neat thing. And people really enjoyed it. They really did. And, and they could also hire an instructor, be paid by the half hour, whatever hour to, be the captain on the boat and just do that, And so business would grow and grow and grow. And so I worked with my daddy for a while. And when it was fairly simple, till Jeannie Marie came along, my best friend, who was like my sister. Um, and so um, I'll tell you one thing. It was funny because, when I was really young and my parents had the first sailing school, the Academy of Sailing in Long Beach, um, they really were top dog business people. I mean, us kids were there and, like all day, most of the time. And, you know, they were just really good in business together. They were great at selling customers, handling customers, everything. My mother was kind of mainly the secretary at first when they had opened. And then, my dad was teaching her how to sail and getting her better and better. And then she ended up being a top dog, single hander, female, like in the world or something. And it was amazing. And my dad created that, it was just amazing. I don't think my mother had ever sailed a boat in her life before she was married to my daddy. And so they were just iconic in business together. Personally, they didn't get along too good. But in business, they were great. And it was funny because when we worked for my dad, we did not get along at home. I had a really serious hate for my father. Um, and, I was the kind of kid that was like, he's an idiot. And if I could figure out a way to get out of here. And, I thought I was really smart. I'm going to tell you to this day, no, I was not very smart. I should have hung, around till I was like 18, because I chose the rough road. Although I made it, and today I don't suggest that to any child because things were so different back then. I got away with a lot of crap, okay, when I left home. And I was very, very lucky, from fake ID to all kinds of stuff. And fake ID was the only way to get paid real money, because if you were a kid, they didn't want to pay you. So, again, I would tell you it's not a good idea today. I did what I did. I can't really turn back those tables, but if I would have tried to hold my breath more, but I was just so aggravated, so miserable, and I knew I could do it by myself because I was so far advanced, and I didn't need him, and so I bailed. I left home real young, and it was like shortly after I'd helped him with the sailing school and stuff and DOORDASH. But I thank the grace of God that I got to work that job because I got some secretarial experience from answering the phone, doing different paperwork, you know posting the bills, and making receipts for customers and all that, and creating a bank deposit type thing. I mean, scheduling classes and stuff like that, answering the phone, selling over the phone, a little bit of typing here and there, sending out statements for people that owed money because he would let people charge account stuff. And so, and there was never any real grave problems in that business. There weren't like people coming in complaining, all pissed off, or any kind of stuff like that. It went really smoothly. We offered a service. They loved the service, and they had money. Okay, and most of the people that we dealt with were like doctors and dentists and lawyers and actors, people that had money because it was a luxury hobby type thing to learn how to sail without having to go out and buy a boat, and you don't know nothing and all that. And so that way you can get the experience of sailing, and then you can make a decision on if you wanted to make that big purchase. Buying a boat was like buying a Lambo. Do you really want to buy it? Do you really want to pay all that insurance? Are you going to take care of it? Are you going to wreck it? Is it worth that much money? I mean, a car was, you know, $3,000 to $6,000 back then, a brand new car, and I mean, a boat was like 25,000, for a nice sailboat. Okay, so you know, you had to have a little bit of money. Um, I mean, back then my dad was making it was, I guess, 100 a half hour or 100 an hour for private instruction, and it was hilarious. It's like, do people really want to pay that? That's insane money. Plumbers didn't even make that kind of money, and uh, he did. People would pay. They really would pay. They adored him. He was just an incredible personality back then, and so he had it going. He had it going on from doing the convention shows and selling classes there, and doing lectures, and working in colleges, and doing his lectures up at um, Griffith Observatory. That was pretty neat. Um, all the different things that he did. Uh, and we even did stuff like for the TV shows and stuff. I guess it was Hawaii 5-0, I think it was, where they have like the waves crashing in the beginning of the show, and then the guys coming through with the um, the canoes or whatever and all that. Well, my dad directed that. Okay, he went out and bought these canoes. It was hilarious. And they called him and said, can you teach these people this? We want to do this shoot, da 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 da. And so, my dad like goes out and buys his canoes and everything, and they're going out on the beach, out like at Venice Beach and whatever, and he's teaching these people, how to like canoe through the waves and all, and stuff like that. It was just amazing. And then next was the movies, who they wanted to do some filming on the boats, or use a boat, and he was real leery of that. And but they pay huge money, and they give you a deposit and everything if there's any damages and all that kind of thing. So it was kind of interesting. And so he becomes really famous in very short order. And my mother, we had lost the Academy Sailing in Long Beach, and so my dad carried on, you know, and with his little tiny business. in California Sailing Academy in Marina Del Rey, California. That's right. And so, it got bigger, and it got bigger. And it got kind of aggravating because at one point, you know, this girl had like signed up so much different stuff for you to do in the office. There was so much work, way too much paperwork. There was paperwork upon paperwork. It was just so horrible. But maybe it was beneficial. I don't know. It was just a pain in the butt. Every time the phone rang, you had to write it in three different places, and then you had to put them on the mailing list and get their address and all this other horse crap. And then, after they'd signed up or whatever and done their first class, then you had to ask for more information. And then we had a newsletter, like a monthly or weekly newsletter, that we had to mail all those out to every student that had ever taken a class there. And tell them what the new things were going on when the next Catalina cruises were, the celestial navigation, the coastal piloting classes, that lecture at Griffith Observatory, and how much that was to get tickets or whatever. And just went on and on and on. So it went from a very simple business of a wall calendar running out of a closet with a typewriter and a telephone to a little bit bigger office. And then I suggested, when upstairs went vacant, one of the, I think it was a yacht sales company or yacht insurance company, that went out of business, and it was like, hey, you ought to get that upstairs. And he's like, what would I do with that? And it's so expensive, you have lost your mind. I'm like, well, I don't know, I think it sounds good. And then, I brought him up there again. We're walking, and I said, look, you could use this for an office and then teach a class right there next to the office in class instead of all on the boat. And he's like, oh, gee. Well, that grew and that grew, because the next one went vacant. He rented that. That became another classroom. The next one went vacant. He rented that. That became another classroom. Now there was also an attic upstairs of that. So now my dad could put all the garbage that was in our house, that we rented our apartment. We didn't have a garage or anything like that. All the extra sales, broken sales, whatever, that were ripped or whatever, and all that extra junk he could throw up in that attic. Lots of room, and it was just a whole bunch more room. And then he ended up with like the whole upper half of the building. It was amazing. And it also ended up with an extra office that was just his, which was kind of cool. And it was amazing. Just amazing for years and years and years. And so, anyway, that was a good experience for me to so called run my daddy's business, and to meet all the great people and everything else, and famous people, and listen to the lectures. And I mean, it was like all the time. It's like everything was glassed in, but sitting at the desk, you would hear these lectures over and over and over again, and they were always the same. No matter who was teaching it, whether it was my daddy or another instructor. By that time, I think we had 5 instructors. We had Danny Mazzaro, we had Bill Stump, Bob, um, gosh, we had so many instructors. Vince had left from teaching back way early. Um, and then, oh gosh, I'm trying to think of all these different guys that taught there. And so, the business was really building. And, there was classes running at the same time. And he had like, I guess 4 of the Solings. And they were real neat. They were like a 24, 26-foot boat, maybe. Their Olympic class, and then had red hulls. I think all of them had red hulls except for like one had white or baby blue. And then on the sail, he had a big red stripe put across. Bill Dickerson did our sails. It's Dickinson or Dickerson? I think it's Dickinson. He had a sail company that he used to build sails for people, and he had a big loft down just off of Marina Del Rey, around the Culver City side by somewhere by Lincoln in Washington. And he was a great man. God, Bill was like family to us. And my dad could go to him day and night and go, look, I need this sale done, or I need this sale repaired because we're going to do a race to Ensenada, whatever. And he was always there for my daddy. And so all the sales for the sailing school, my dad thought it'd be a really good idea if you put a big red stripe across the middle of the sail and then the big badge logo of the sailing school in the middle of that. So when people would see the boats sailing, you know, around, it was like advertisement for the business. And it was usually like four students and one instructor per boat. And these were just like a flush deck boat, and um, there's like no sleeping quarters or anything like that. It was just a boat, and they were beautiful boats. And so they looked lovely across the bay, and I mean classes were going, I think like 9 a.m. till like 4 p.m. or something like that, and all day long, every day, 7 days a week. And so he had pretty good little business going, and became quite iconic as the years progressed when he opened up the leasing company and boat rental thing. And he was doing the cruises to Catalina Island, and those were really neat. It'd be like a weekend cruise. We'd leave like Friday night, and head over to Catalina and be sailing back Sunday night. And most of the time us kids would go, and or we had to go because he sure wasn't going to leave us home alone for that long. Yeah, I could have found lots of cool things to be doing if he'd leave me home for that long. But anyway, so um, it was pretty incredible. But I will say, it was a great experience for me. I'm sure thinking today, he probably did it just to keep me off Venice Beach because he thought I was down there hanging out with hoodlums and doing bad things, which I was not. It was just the place to go. Even today, Venice is a big time kind of place, and that's where people go. You know, there's so much to see and do down there, and it's just a tourist thing. Um, so yeah, but yeah, so yes, I worked for my daddy in his business. I was real young, and it was a great experience. I wasn't paid poop, but sorry, daddy. But that experience was worth hundreds and hundreds of dollars, because I was, through the years, that was great for me to get a job. When I said, okay, I want to be a receptionist, and do you have experience? Yes, I do. I have very good telephone etiquette. um, do you know how to post checks? Yes, I do. Do you know how to schedule? Yes, I do. you know so good experience, very good experience. Plus I was good with people, and I could sell. Okay. The whole idea was to talk them into something else while they were there. I would go, oh, we have these cruises, or oh, did you want to sign up for the next classes they're starting in the next week for basic number two, or intermediate one, or the coastal piloting, or the Catalina cruise, or whatever. You could go, oh yeah, we're going to have this. And they'd say, yeah, I'm really interested. And you just penciled them in on that schedule, dude. It's like, here's the dates that we got, which ones would you like? And you penciled them in right there. Some of them paid on the spot in advance for the whole thing, or just first class. And my dad had a rule: when the doctors started coming out with this thing, you call the doctor's office and you make an appointment. Okay. Well, they want you to make a deposit. All right. So you're supposed to pay that, whatever the fee was for the doctor's visit. It was $50, $20, I don't know what it was. And they want you to pay that fee. And then if you miss your appointment, you sacrifice the fee. Or if you give them 24 hours notice, they'll let you reschedule. So my dad had adopted that policy into his business. And I'm like, you're going to scare people away. It worked. People showed up. If they were going to be late, they called. If they were going to be out of town or a family emergency, they called and left a message on the answering service. Or, during business hours, hey, I can't make that Tuesday class. at 1 o'clock. Can I reschedule, please? And we would gladly reschedule if it was more than 24-hour notice before the class would begin. So it was interesting. It was really well done, very well done business. Um, and so I do appreciate the opportunity, not the money, but the money was crap. Um, but it was good opportunity for me because I left shortly thereafter. Um, I didn't stay long with my dad because I thought I was really a smart cat, and I bailed. But at least I did it in a nice way. I left a nice letter. I only took what belonged to me, and I left it nice and clean, and that was the end of that. And then we were enemies for a lot of years. He just never would accept me, and I never wanted to be where he was. I would even move to other cities because I didn't want to be recognized as his daughter because everything I ever had, they were like, "Oh, your daddy bought that. Your rich daddy bought that." I'm like, "No, that's not the way it goes." I walked, and there's like no loans, and there's like no calling and going help, help, because that wasn't the deal. Once you stepped over the doorstep, his words were, "You're on your own." And he'd said it many times when we'd get in arguments, so I already knew the rules, you know, and so yeah, that's the way it was. I made that jump. It was my problem to babysit myself. And people are like, "God, you have a mean family," or "I can't believe your family doesn't help you." Well, it's not their job. If I'm that big of a grown up person to leave home at 15 and a half, then it's my business about taking care of myself, right? It's not my father's problem, you know? It's not my father's fault or my mother's or anybody else. I made that jump. And I can't, still to this day, can't believe I did that, but I did. And I made it through. I did okay. I didn't have to be a hooker or sell drugs. Yay. Okay. So, uh, you know, it, I made that decision because I was bullheaded just like my dad, you know, and, and, and I think that's a lot of reason why we didn't get along as well because we were too much alike. We were very strong, pungent, strong, bullheaded, kind of like, you know. So anyway, but I'm very grateful for the experience. I think it helped me a lot in life. And I dealt with some very high class, proper people, some very, very wealthy people, famous people. Um, and I was well accepted wherever I went because I was the captain's daughter. Even when I went to the yacht clubs, to parties and stuff like that, it was a blast. Okay. And so, I guess I was just really, really, really lucky. So, that was another job when I was very young. But yes, I did work for my parents. One thing is, I highly suggest. I talked to some friends of mine that come from Oklahoma to Destin to work every year during spring break, and they're very young. Two guys, and they say they're brothers. They're really not blood brothers, but they're brothers. They grew up together and are best friends, but they're brothers. And you know, the one kid, his dad has a very large business. He's like, "Oh, my dad is this, this, this." I'm like, "Holy heck, what are you doing here?" And he goes, "Because I want to do something on my own. My dream is I'd really like to be a bartender or a server." And I'm like, "Oh, quit." And he goes, I said, "Why you don't work for your dad?" "Oh, he's trying to get me to work for him." And I said, "Let me tell you something. If he's really trying that hard, you should do it. Because I'm going to tell you why. If anything ever happens, you need to be able to continue that business and his history, in time. Okay? Because he might even leave the thing to you. And it's going to be horrible if you have to go in there and run something you know nothing about. If your dad believes in you that much to bring you in to the business, to work in it, you could be management, you could be a lot of stuff because you're going to be very trusted because you're blood, your family. You should respect that. I would definitely check it out, at least for a little bit, to learn that business in case anything goes wrong. Your dad gets sick or something with his health or something. You need to be able to step in there. And, sons are different than daughters. There's a huge pride with people, especially in the Latin families. You know, if a boy is born, that is like God. you know? And it's like a man's total pride. The boy will carry the name on of the family, blah, 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 blah. So that's a really important thing. So if you're a boy, you have a lot more power than a girl does because, the daddy's probably going to, sign stuff over to you if he were to die or be incapacitated in some way or something. And you should be prepared for that. Don't let the business fail or close because of things like that. Your parents worked so hard to develop those businesses and get them to where they are. There's no sense in throwing it away in the trash can. You know what I mean? So I told him, I said, I would think about it very seriously if he's asking you so many times and really wants you to work for him. I would at least go in there and do it just to know the business a little bit. And then if you didn't like it, go back to doing busboy or whatever it is, and just go on from there. But I think it would be so much better, if you just gave it a little bit of a chance because it might be really important if, time goes by in an emergency situation. Um, so, we'll see. But anyway, I hope you guys have a great day. And there is my synopsis of working for my daddy, running his business when I was just a kid, and um, and I'm grateful for it. So I'll talk to you guys later. I love you, and I will see you in the next one. Do something kind for a stranger. I'll see you in the next one.